You're watching Storytellers, and today we have with us Dr. Alka Pande. She is an author, an art curator and an art historian. She did her PhD on a manifestation of Shiva, which was half man and half woman. Tell us more about your PhD and why did you choose that topic?
When I finished my MA in art history in Panjab University, I was looking for excitement. And I'm talking of many, many years ago, more than 35 years ago, when Chandigarh was a boarding city with grey walls and grey beards. And my supervisor told me that one of our most eminent art historians, who was also the director of the National Museum, his name was Sivarama Murthy, and he had done a book called Nataraj in Dance, Thought and Literature. And one aspect of Shiva, which was the most popular aspect after the Nataraj, was the concept of Ardhanari Ishvara. So what does Ardhanari Ishvara mean? It means the Lord who is half woman. My doctoral work, which I turned into a book, and if you see, you don't see a standard image of the Lord who is half woman. That you will see inside the book as calendar art, where many people would have seen this image. It's a very popular image where Shiva is half Parvati and half Shiva. And this book was done in 2003, but here you have transgendered people. And there are many stories which are associated with the concept of Ardhanarishvara in ancient times, which are ever so relevant in contemporary times. So today, when you look at the Aravanis or you look at the transgendered people on the road, many people think that they are sacred people. Why? Because in Hinduism, in particular, in our Puranic tales, we are very inclusive. You have also the concept of Shikhandi, who was responsible for the death of the greatest warrior, Bhishma Pitama, and Shikhandi was transgendered. And you have myths and stories. We are full of myths and stories in our epics. This is in the Mahabharata, how there were three women, Amba, Ambalike, Ambika.
And
Your name,
yes.
Ambika. So one of the sisters was already engaged to the king of Shalya, and Bhishma picked them all up to get them married to his nephew. And when Shalya refused to take back Amba, she was so angry that she said, I will seek my revenge. And she came in a transgendered form, because no man or woman could kill the great warrior Bhishma. So these are all the stories which are which go into the making of the myth of Ardhanarishwar. When I began with Ardhanarishwar, it was purely an art historical way of looking at this image of Shiva, who is half man, half woman.
Why did he take this form?
Yeah. So what happened is that Brahma is supposed to be the creator.
Yeah.
He created the Prajapatis, and which were the original beings of the earth. And then when he slept, Shiva came to him in the form of half man, half woman. He realized his mistake, that he hadn't created a woman. So he created women after that. So this is one of the stories which go into the making of Ardhanarishwara. There is another image that there was a Rishi Bhringi who was such a worshipper of Shiva that he was only circumambulating around Shiva. Parvati got really annoyed. She was Shakti, the primordial energy. So she conjoined herself in one form. So Shiva became half man, half woman. But Bhringi did not give up. He dug a hole in between and only circumambulated Shiva. So there are many stories of the making of the image of Shiva as half man, half woman. It is also related to the fact that this was the coming together of two religions, Shaivism and Shaktism. This is also about balance of Purush and Prakriti.
So Shaivism, I know, is the
people who follow Shiva,
and
Shaktism is people who follow Shakti or Devi,
right.
and Parvati is Devi. So the balance between Shiva and Shakti is the ultimate balance. male, female, Purush, Prakriti. So the balance comes through this image, where nowhere in the world will you have this image. Even hermaphrodite is divided horizontally, but this is made vertically. Perfection. So in each of us there is a male and a female chromosome. So what is more dominant makes us that.
Are there any temples in India dedicated to
there
image
are
of Shiva?
Yes, there is. In Shankar Narayan Koil in Tamil Nadu, there's a temple dedicated to Ardhanarisvara, but in many Shiva temples and many Devi temples, you will always find a Ardhanarisvara shrine, either in the temple facade or within the temple complex. It is, as I told you earlier, the most dominant or the popular image after Shiva Nataraj.
All right. Now we go to talking about aesthetics of the erotic in traditional Indian art, which includes gender and sexuality. Take us through that.
I was approached by Rowley Books in 2001 to do a book on Indian erotica. I jumped at the idea because this is almost 24 years ago, the concept of doing a coffee table book was very exciting, and Rowley was the master of coffee table books.
Still are, yes.
Yeah. So I agreed without even thinking what I'm going into, and I said, of course I will do this book. When I started doing the book on Indian erotica, I found a whole new world opened out to me. It was a different world, full of sensuality, full of love, full of longing, full of desire, lust, shame. There was in India we hardly have any shame, but it had every aspect of human emotion, which was positive and also negative. We take love as a very positive emotion. Do we take lust as a positive emotion? I don't know. But there was no shame within the Indian context, and any text that you read, whether it's secular or religious, all our gods have consorts. Where did the Kama Sutra emerge? One of the stories about the emergence of the Kama Sutra is that Nandi heard the sounds of love making of Shiva and Parvati, and then the Kama Sutra happened. So what I would say is that when I started doing this book, it was called Indian Erotica, I was actually overwhelmed. The book took only 1 year in the making because I had a deadline. But after that, my studies continued. And then about 8 years ago, or maybe a little more, I did this wonderful exhibition on the Kama Sutra, which was called The Spiritual and the Erotic in Indian Art. So in the City of Love, I did the Kama Sutra. The exhibition was on in Paris. On for almost 4 months, and there were serpentine lines really looking at the exhibition. There were 336 artworks, from painting to sculpture to prints to film clips. And what I find very interesting is that every other day or every other time when I'm doing anything related to gender and sexuality, the myths of our country, as you are calling your channel or your post, Storytellers, we are a land of storytellers, and there are so many stories. Of course, myth is not history. These are cultural anecdotes which come from generations. They are not even often written, they are not coded, but they tell us a lot of where we come from.
Just going back, so when was Kama Sutra written? In which
century? Well, it was written in the 4th century of the Christian era, in the time of the Gupta period, written by a brahmachari, by a priest who was a bachelor, who was not married. In fact, it was almost a voyeuristic look at the whole aspect of love making within society. And the Kama Sutra, unlike what it is, it's a much misunderstood text. People think it's a text on pornography. People think that in the Kama Sutra there's a man having sex with 6 women, or one woman having 10 lovers at the same time. It's not that at all. The Kama Sutra is actually an amalgamation of the the visdom of many sages from Uddalika to Shvetaketu through many centuries. It was Vatsayan who put all this together. He collated it. So there are 7 books which are present in the Kama Sutra. The first, most important, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. It encompasses the whole cosmos. So what is Dharma? You have to lead a righteous life. Karma and Artha, how do you earn your money? If you don't have money, how do you have a great life? So where is your Artha coming from? Then once you get your Artha, which is got in the right way through Dharma, you come to Kama, which is sexual pleasure. You are born in this earth. If you're not going to the birds and the bees do it, that's all what we were taught. So if we don't enjoy sexual pleasure, whether it is as a heterosexual person or a same-sex person, but sexuality is important because the enjoyment of sexual pleasure will ultimately take you to moksha. So when people talk of the temples which have erotic sculpture, whether you look at the Sun Temple in Konarak, whether you look at the beautiful Kandarya Mahadev Temple in Khajuraho, where you have explicit scenes, go through all the aspects of life and leave all that, and then only do you enter the Sanctum Sanctora, which is the purest space. So where inside the temples where the deity is, you don't see sculpture and paintings. It's a very minimal space. It's a very sacred space. So what you see everything outside, because that is the world, that's the cosmos.
So I want to break this conversation because I spoke to somebody who is associated with people who are between 17 to let's say 27, and they said because that generation is exposed to so many apps, they have very limited patience for a relationship. So let alone the whole 7 volumes of Kama Sutra, how do you think the knowledge of Kama Sutra can help the relationship commitment phobic person of today?
Because that is what the Kama Sutra was written about. It was for the Nagaraka. It was written for the man about town. How does he seduce a woman? You just today the world has changed.
You have the swipe right. Where does seduction even play a role?
but you see, that's a cultural difference. So many people are going back into romance. People want romance. I'm not saying that. You go back to the old times where in a film like Mere Mehboob, you just see the eyes, you take a flower and embed it in your books, and then you hold the fragrance. Those days are gone. But I'm sure touch, relationships, feelings, they are more important than ever before, because otherwise that's making the world very transactional. And today this young generation, we are all talking about it, but are they truly happy? The question is the quotient of happiness. What about their mental health? So the fact that there is a greater need for therapy, there's a greater need for counseling, all what is happening today, it is because the breakup of the systems and culture of relationships is undergoing a change. In the good old days, there were, ghazals, sher, shairi, poetry. Do people write poetry today to their lovers? No, very few. One little message on it makes it so, it's literally love in the age of mechanical reproductions. So tomorrow there will be cyborgs and all those people making love.
Right.
Where is the human feelings? I would like here to give the example of this film called OMG2. I think it's a brilliant film. I have not seen a film, and I love movies, I have not seen a film or a docu which is talking of male masturbation. This film is, somebody told me, oh no, you love it. I said, no, I don't want to watch that Akshay Khanna with that top knot and being Shiva, this whole thing. So then they said, no, there's Pankaj Tripathi, and I like Pankaj Tripathi very much. I said, okay, I'll give it a try. When I saw the movie, believe you me, I'm not talking of the merits of the movie, but the concept, I was blown over. It was about, and they said, oh, it's about sex education. Yes, it is about sex education, but it's also about understanding your own sexuality. It's a coming of age of a young boy. It is the coming of age of the parents, where the doctor, the very lovely comment he made when the son is being shamed into masturbating, when the doctor tells the father, a traditional priest in a temple, be a friend to your son. And then how the father really manages to get the self-respect for his young prepubescent boy back by giving examples from the Kama Sutra and the sexual sculptures in our temples, and making people understand that if they understood the raison d'etre of how is sex being approached. Sometimes it's approached in a very pragmatic manner. In fact, the Kama Sutra was written as a manual for a great and happy life. Sometimes the Kama Sutra was also used to bring excitement back into their life through the use of aphrodisiacs. The chapter on courtesans, for example, it's such a wonderful book, The Courtesan, which shows how much agency young beautiful women had, and how the courtesans were different to the geisha girls, different to the commercial sex workers. They were women who decided they knew how to milk a wealthy lover, they knew how to get rid of an unwanted lover. In their spaces, kings came, big decisions were taken. It was like having round table conferences, warring parties came together, sat, had conversations, and the courtesan was a very, very accomplished woman. She was cognizant of the 64 arts, from archery to perfume making, to food, to dancing, to making jewelry. She was not a woman who you look down on. I mean, I think in many ways she was a very, very empowered woman who decided who she is going to sleep with. You could not succumb, or you could not make her do something which she didn't want to do once she had reached a certain position in life. It's like the story of Amrapali, the Nagarvadhu of Vaishali. She was called the city bride. Why? Because she said she was too beautiful to be kept for one man. So you see, this is what we learn from our stories.
And even the artworks that one sees on these temples, was it just art, or was it actually happening?
So now I'll ask you just this question: does art imitate society? I rest my case, because nothing is produced in a vacuum, right? How does it come into the minds of these artists to show copulating couples? You look at the miniature paintings, you have such beautiful paintings of love making, you have the pleasure albums, you have illustrated Kama Sutras. Obviously the Kama Sutra has been written, right, by Vatsyayan.
Yeah.
So was it only a figment of his imagination, or did he make a record of the society he was living in? Bhartrihari, Keshavadas, the poet of Orcha, all of them were given lots of monies from their patrons, the kings, to write. And where do you get your inspiration from? From the society you live in.
Now, in the current world that we live in, which is all about pronounce your sexuality being a key part of your identity, it's a unisex world, it's an inclusive world that's based on equal rights, and where women are, or at least try to be, an equal part of the workforce. Are all these teachings and conversations relevant and the myths in the current world?
We as women learn that how we can be forceful without being aggressive. From the readings that I made, like from the Courtesan or from Amrapali, here were women who were independent women. They did not have men taking care of them. They did not live on the earnings of their fathers or their husbands or their patrons. That's why they had the agency. And I think economic empowerment gives a great deal of agency to women. The unfortunate thing being, women are so powerful, but you know, another woman cannot tolerate another woman. We get a lot of flack from women, and then the men, they bond together very quickly and make their own boundaries for strong women. So, I think we as women learn from the stories of our past, but we should do that retaining our femininity. Don't you like your chair being pulled out? I definitely do. I don't want to carry huge bags. I don't mind if a young man comes and says, may I? I would love it. So, why can't we have balance? Why can't we enjoy the best that we can give to society? Women bring in a certain kind of refinement. I am not saying men don't have it, but men bring in another kind of energy. So, why can't we harness the creative, the feminine and masculine energies together, marry them well and live in a more inclusive, balanced world? But this struggle has been in the past, it is still there in the present and will continue in the future, but it is up to us how much we learn from our ancestors, how much we learn from the women who have ruled, you know. And I think for a woman to be strong does not mean bra burning and beating her chest and shouting from rooftops and saying, I'm a feminist. It's in the doing, it's in your actions, it's by having confidence in yourself, by having all the 64 arts which the courtesan had, and negotiating into the future.
What about India's image of being so conservative? How does the dichotomy come through? And there was a conversation which I heard in one of your interviews where you said there was a point of time in Indian history where prostitution was legalized and prostitutes had to pay tax because their earnings were considered as legal earnings. Now India is considered to be like a conservative society. So at which point did the dichotomy come through?
You know, when a country is constantly invaded, women are the first people to be hit at. They are vulnerable. It happens everywhere in the world. So women started taking a little bit of a backseat in North India in particular, because we had a lot of Islamic invasions as well. But society did not change so much, the pleasure was still there. I think it was with the coming in of the British, who were very, very conservative. If you read the history of sexuality of Michel Foucault, they covered piano legs, sandwiches, and as I said, they even covered the women. If you see all our sculptures, the women are very beautifully endowed and they are wearing very, very sexy dresses like a sthanapatti and a lower garment and an antarya, and you look at the Yakshi from Didarganj with her upper part of her body bare, and there is no commodification of the body. But over the years we became very, very I would say conservative, and I think probably it was the Victorian prudery that did it, and now we are lashing out with a different kind of female aggression. But I think that will soon blow over, because women are also realizing that they are a force to be reckoned with. Women are finally getting their own agency, and I think to be looked upon by the world as conservative, we are to blame. We put the worst of ourselves out in social media and the press. Do the others? I had gone about.
Give us an example.
I'll give you an example. The Nirbhaya accident happened. I had gone to Belgium and I was asked, how are you living in Delhi? Isn't there rape around every corner? I told them, I said, what about America? What about London? What about the number of stabbings and things? And now, most recently 2 years ago, Black Lives Matter, it happened in America, not in India. We put the worst of ourselves out. It's a country where women are respected and loved and cherished as nowhere else in the world. Our art shows that. The way the women are shown, medieval India in particular, the woman and her body is extolled, revered, worshipped, admired. Nowhere else. I mean, you look at the art, Christian art, the women are always so covered and so demure, and it's always the Madonna. Here we have the Shalabhanjikas, we have the Yakshinis, We have women who are naikas, you know, heroines in miniature paintings, and we really celebrate women, femininity and womanhood. But in the everyday, we belittle ourselves, and I don't want to just blame the men. The women are equally responsible. They should hold their flag high and take pride in being women, because this whole North Indian patriarchy, may you be a mother of 100 sons, has to be done away with.
Thank you so much for your time, and I hope it's helped all our viewers, all the knowledge you had to share. Thank you so much, Dr. Pande.
Thank you, Ambika. Thank you very much.